Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next act is an award winning Canadian country duo. Combining energetic stage performance with musical storytelling, they have mastered a true pop country blend. Welcome, Broadtree.
Hello.
Hello.
Goodness.
I always like to start with where your music journey kind of all began. So I'm guessing that kind of is individual until it kind of, we meet paths here. So I'll let you guys kind of just take that.
Yeah, I mean, I came from the punk rock world way back when, in the high school days and then the garage band days, and we I had I'll say a humbly successful pop punk journey, and then I think once the band kind of ended, I kind of figured, okay, that'll be it for music, and then the plague hit, as we like to call it, or COVID, whatever which way you want to look at it, and as an artist, you everything kind of got derailed at that point, and it came a time where, like, you know what, I'm kind of bored and I need to do something, and I haven't done music in quite a while, so that's where I kind of came into it, and then I said, let's start up a project, and then I called Nicole.
Yeah, and so I came in a really strange way. I never really intentionally entered the music industry, I suppose. I started out doing musical theater, which is where a lot of the musical theater sound are. We're both musical theater kids for sure. And yeah, so that's what I went to school for, and that's what I've been kind of doing since, luckily, for me. And yeah, and so then Armand and I have done some shows together. We met on stage doing a play, and then he contacted me later on, and we did a two-hander musical called The Last 5 Years. If anybody out there knows their Jason Robert Brown, we did a musical called The Last 5 Years together, and it went super well. And I think that is probably why during the COVID, when life shut down and no one had anything going on performance-wise, I think maybe that's maybe why it
Yeah.
popped into your head to say hey, well, he was going to start up sort of like a solo music project thing, and he wanted to put a duet on it.
Mm.
And so he reached out to me saying, hey, do you want to sing on this duet with me? And I, of course, was like, oh my God, yes, of course. And that's how we started sort of doing music together, and it all kind of snowballed from there.
I mean,
It's weird. It's weird to say, like, we were bored. And that's what, you want the TLDR of that one. We were bored, and it turned into something that we never really expected.
Yeah.
I feel like the COVID thing as a time stamp is a very
Yeah.
common thing.
Mhm.
Whether it's that's when, it's like you said, out of boredom, it just kind of by default we fell into this because what else are we going to do when the world isn't functioning?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Or it's like that is where people kind of took like that, like there I've heard plenty of stories that's like that was supposed to be like when I was supposed to go on tour and it was supposed to level up where things were at, and it just kind of shifted into obviously something else because that wasn't what was happening at the time. But I like hearing this side of it because it's like, as unfortunate and not ideal as the whole COVID, the plague thing was, it there's a silver lining.
Mhm.
Now we got you guys making music. Now we got plenty of other people that are doing it. It's a really cool, it's crazy how much has kind of revolved around that point in time and how big that is outside of just being what it was. But yeah, that's cool. I didn't know the musical theater background. That's cool.
And you can kind of hear it in our music even still. Like people still tell us oh, it sounds like a Disney song, or oh, it sounds very like musical theater. Like you still can hear the influence for sure in
Yeah.
our songs.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely, and it's always cool because whether it's intentional or not, I feel like I've had a lot of pop girls I feel like that I've had on here have been also musical theater originators. And so you can hear the hint of it in the arrangements or in the way that the vocals kind of go off in different points. And so it's a scale of how much of it is there and how much of it isn't, but you can always find at least a flavor of it in there. And I kind of love that because it's like
Well,
your
I
own
mean, yeah,
personal stamp on it,
once a theater kid, always a theater kid, the way I look at it.
Yeah.
For sure. Um, so what do you guys find most often inspires your songwriting?
Well, we're again because theater kids, I guess. We're very much storytellers. Like we find a story, whether it's something that we've had experience with personally, like most people write from that, I suppose,
Mhm.
or whether it's something that's happened to a friend, or whether it's just something that we've read in a book or seen in a movie. If there's a seed of a story in there, and we're like, what angle could we approach this story from? How could we explain this situation in a song format? And I think that's kind of usually where we get our inspiration from.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll bring in our own personal experiences, but I think, I think there was one song, well, probably one of the first songs that we wrote together. We kind of came at it from, all right, what if there were two people that had to say goodbye for whatever reason? I don't know, maybe like one of them's moving, whatever the case may be, and like they're sitting at a bar and it's their last drink together. And that whole thing just turned like that whole conversation turned into a song. And like the nice thing about being a duet and like or being a duo, we can each kind of write in our own characters, as we like to call them. Like I think we can, whenever we're writing a song or when we're writing a story, like we'll lend our own experiences. But the cool thing about it is we can kind of create this character. And I mean, if you ask us, like we can give you, if you name a song, we could probably tell you like the characters and the stories that we had in mind and give you their full backstories on who they are. No one's ever going to hear that, but for us, it kind of just helps to draw out this like complex character and then give them a little bit of our own experience. So, we'll write from the heart, but a lot of the times I think it's really, really fun to just, even if you don't necessarily have an experience to go with it, just to be able to create something fun out of it.
Yeah, and I also love that we try to be as like we try to be universal in like the message, I guess, but we try to be really specific in the details.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our songs will have some very specific imagery and stuff like that, which I think comes from us like planning out these sort of characters in advance who are living this story.
When because you mentioned each kind of writing from your own character, do you ever like if you were to look back at like the original stuff, like is there any like clear, um, what am I trying to say here? What is there any clear like difference that you can identify between like the way each of you write in those voices and like the way that like what is it that kind of gives each of your tastes on into the project versus like like where are those characters identified? What are the differences and how do they kind of interact? I don't know if I'm making sense with that or not,
No,
but
and I'm just like that's a really good question. Um, I don't know. I think I can always look at like I don't know, and I'm speaking for myself. Like when we write out a character, I think we'll each lend our own experiences to it. But there hasn't necessarily been a point yet where I think we're writing from. Okay, so I'm just going to write my side of the story in this duet and like how this character would kind of go in. Cool. Here's my story. Let's see how you tell it. And I think a lot of that just has to do with if we want to be able to tell a really good story, the two of us will go in and we'll look at the people that we're trying to tell this story for, who these people are. And we'll need to kind of communicate to be able to kind of articulate, okay, well, here's where this person is at, and we can kind of give our own details to one individual and then look at the other person and kind of see what they're going to be. Because I don't know, we've never really tried writing like, okay, let me go in and put my character and see how it goes in, but
Mhm.
it'd be an interesting challenge to write a song that way.
It would be.
yeah, no, no,
No. I think that's yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think it's we always kind of go in, and I think the joy of writing together is that whenever we're creating a character, creating a story, we always want to be able to kind of go in and give both sides to it. And I think if we're writing from like a painful experience, or if I'm trying to kind of lend in, using as something that's like healing, uh, we get the opportunity to kind of be able to take a story or take a character and say, okay, well, here's what's happened to me, but how do we spin it into something positive? And I think the way you always say is we always try to find, even in like the saddest of songs in particular, because we started during the plague and there was not a lot of joy going on then. We always try to find an element of hope in anything that we're writing.
Yeah, for all the characters. The other cool thing about having the two of us there to sort of bounce ideas off of and stuff is because there's a lot of discovery, I find, when we're songwriting. There are so many moments, and like usually we're pretty open. We don't butt heads a lot. We don't often have moments where we're like, no, like, someone will present an idea and the other person will be like, no, that is not my character. We don't have that very often. Often, like, we're very lucky this way, but more often we'll just find more inspiration from that. Like the other person will say, but what if it was this? And then there's oh, that makes it so much better or so much deeper or whatever it is, There's great moments of discovery that I don't think we would necessarily find on our own without each other, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, the benefit of having multiple perspectives on something is it's like you could be just inching towards the direction that you want to go, and there could just be something that's just standing in your way of getting to the point that you're trying to get to, whether you know that that's where you're trying to go or not. And the other person
Yeah.
just kind of like picks up that like fence that's standing in the way and like moves it out of the way and is like, here's how we get there. Here's how we get to where we're kind of trying to go with this.
And I think
Um,
for us as like I mean it's fun to be able to say for us as songwriters because this was relatively new to you in particular, but I think the reason that I think we've managed to get through COVID and we're still kind of working together is like we enjoy writing together. I mean it's really really fun, and I think to that point I don't know. I don't think we've ever really had a moment where we both just sat there and gone, I've got nothing. What do you have? Nothing. Okay, well, today is not going to be a writing day. Each one of us will always at least have something to just kind of spark an idea. And then from there, I mean, there's never been a single point where one of us comes in with a prompt or an idea and we haven't had a song come out of it, which is a pretty cool thing to have.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's a huge win because sometimes all it takes is like I always say that half of the battle is sitting down to do the thing, and you have doubled the like willpower to do that because at least somebody's going to want to sit down and do the thing. The other person
Exactly.
might not want to, but as soon as it's like then you're going to have FOMO. It's like this is what we want to do, and then it's like you have to get along with it, you know? You have to get on board.
Yeah, one of us will just be sitting. And I mean, I swear we've had moments where like one of us will have, oh, and they'll just start writing. And I know you've done it, like you've started writing, and I'll just kind of like peek over your shoulder, just be like, what, let me in. And then, it'll be 5 minutes later, but it's like, okay, cool. So here's a page of everything that I've just drawn out for like this individual story that we've written. So yeah, it is a really, really fun process.
And sometimes it surprises you. I'm sure you've encountered this with other artists too, but like sometimes a song goes in a totally different direction from the original idea.
Mm,
Like we've literally had songs before where we're like, okay, this is a solo and it's really tragic, but then that kernel of story is actually, but like, what if it was a happy duet? And like it like changes the same starting point, lends you, like takes you somewhere completely different. Which is really cool. And sometimes we're like, what we think something is one song, and then it ends up being like three songs
yeah.
instead, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's there's never a surefire way in how it's going to unfold. And that's like as you know, sometimes it can be frustrating that it goes in a completely different direction, but I feel like it always lands in a place of like, okay, I'm okay with this being a different version than I was intending it to be because the outcome is probably better than it would have turned out in the original direction. Like everything
Well,
happens for a reason. It gets there, that's supposed to
100%.
be there.
And I think maybe the best example of that was when we were writing, like, I guess I'm going to call it like our big EP, the thing that we were working on for quite a bit. So in 2023, I guess it would have been towards 2020. There was one song like I came up with this concept of like, all right, what if there's this relationship, there's these two people, they go in heavy, but there's a like it has to end. Like there is a deadline or there is a an end date to this relationship ending.
Which for us was like, oh, maybe they meet on vacation. They're both on a vacation and they know the vacation has to end. They can't live in this happy bubble forever type
Yeah, and
thing.
like it was going to be like, all right, so let's write about how happy we are, but how like sad it's going to be when this ends. Like we were in my head, I'm like, this is going to be a stupidly sad song, and then we got to work with Patrick James Clark, who's this incredible songwriter in Canada, and he's the one that said, like, what, but why? Why does it have to be sad? And then like the vacation thing came in and we're like, okay, well, what if it's a really good fling that could potentially turn into something more? And that became
Yeah.
our number one, like our top stream song, which was a really, really cool thing to come out of. And
And now the song is about that exciting moment of deciding I want this fling to be something more, which is kind of fun. But anyway.
yeah,
Yeah. See, everything happens for a reason. It worked out the way it was meant to be. We don't have to
exactly.
make all the songs sad.
Our first album is like, oof.
No, I feel
There's
that. I
like
feel
one
that.
happy song on the whole.
It's hard. It's hard to write stuff that's happy because, and what I always say is like, it's easier to, because a lot of people come at writing music from a like therapeutic sort of place. Like, this is a way that we're just trying to resolve issues, solve our own problems, just kind of deal with whatever is at hand at the moment. You're not dealing with emotions when you're happy. You're just trying to
No.
Yeah.
vibe with that. If you're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
through something, that's when it's time to get creative. That's when it's time to get whatever it is off your chest. We enjoy the
Mhm.
happy. We want to get rid of the other stuff. And so that's
Well,
why that
and
turns into art.
and I think coming out of COVID too,
Mhm.
the happy was so few and far between half the time that you're like, I don't want to write right now. I just actually want to enjoy being happy for this little minuscule point while it lasts.
No, absolutely. It is you just take those moments and run with it. Like why would I stop and then try and like turn it into a song? Because what if you have the reverse happen? What if you're trying to write something happy and it turns sad? That just ruins everything. We can't have that. If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would it be called?
I mean, when we first started out, like we thought the things that we were going to do was literally just going to be like an acoustic guitar and maybe like a little bit of piano or something behind it. And then as we were writing and starting to add layers, and somebody, I don't know who was, but it was like, kind of sounds country, and we're like, all right. And then somebody else was like, it sounds like show tunes, but with country behind it. We're like, well, that tracks. That makes sense.
That's actually where our name comes from. So maybe this would be the name for the genre. So we're called Broadtree, which actually comes from Broadway country, just smashed together. The Brangelina of band names.
That's that's I was wondering where the name came from. I usually just kind of stumble into asking that kind of question at some point. That's clever because it's not spelled like the tree on country.
Oh,
It's like a
Mhm.
separate thing. Like I was like, okay, like
there's the
Canada,
imagery
there's,
that goes with it and
trees
everything.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Like a
it's
big, strong, broad
yeah,
tree,
like
like
I'm
one
thinking like, oh,
nation,
like, we got like country, you think like, you think of, like country folk, like that kind of thing. You think very woodsy and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, okay, like that kind of just blends together. That kind of just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah,
that's
that's totally what
awesome.
we were going for. Thank you.
That's awesome. I
And I think,
love
yeah,
that. That makes me have like a whole new like respect for the name. That just unlocked so many
and
things
that's
for me.
appreciated because there are two reactions to that. There's the one you just had, and there's others like, oh, interesting. You're like,
No, that's awesome because like it's
thanks.
not like there's reason behind it, but it's also like not reason that's just hitting you in the face.
Mhm.
Like it's like it requires a little bit of explanation, but not in some long convoluted kind of way of like,
Yeah.
it's like there was a band I had on that's called Fat James, but it's like PH Fat,
Okay.
and
Mm,
that was like the guy's nickname like in high school or something. And I'm like,
right.
okay, cool. Yeah, like cool.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
it makes for a good band name. It fits them, it does the thing, but like there's not a whole lot like there's you're not telling that as a story. That's really like in the that's I'm I
Thank
we
you.
we could end here and I'm satisfied for the day. That blew my mind a little bit.
Well,
I
Thanks.
love that.
I don't know, and I'd say like in the early days, especially like we it was very I would send a song to somebody and they'd be like, oh, this is a really cool, fun, upbeat like country song, and then we'll have another friend who'll be like, I can imagine this being in a Broadway stage and somebody being on like the edge of it and just like belting it out. We're like, cool, works both ways.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of stumbled into that, and especially the way but there I don't know, there was a point where we started to kind of blend some of our songs, and there's a script somewhere where we're like, we could blend some of this stuff in, and we're kind of almost writing our own jukebox musical somewhere in there of our own songs. We've kind of created what we call the Broadtree verse, where like we can go back and look at, like, for example, the characters in one song and say, could we tell their story like 5 years later after this one event?
Mhm.
And we that was one example that where we've kind of like, it could be fun to write their next story, but also, this song that we just wrote, could this potentially be like where things go wrong for them? And
Yeah, like
you
we've
know
had moments where like, what if this song is a sequel to that song? Because if this is the same two people, imagine how like mind blowing that would be, you know? Like it's broad treeverse.
yeah.
No, that's yeah, no, that's really like that's very that I like the more and more you guys talk about the characters and the stories and everything, I'm like, this is so musical theater. I don't know how I missed this in the first place. But like no, and that's like y'all are tapping into like a brand gold mine there. Like creating this whole like space for everything. Like
Yeah.
I'm very brand and like, bigger picture, like oriented like that. And they're tap into that because that is something there. You got like being able to link these different things together. Like on the surface, people might not like the surface, it might not be obvious, but like
Mhm.
there's connections being made here. And that's
And I think
like,
that, yeah, and I think that's the really unique thing for us. And I think it's one of the reasons that it makes writing so much fun is that we kind of get to pick up. It's like it's writing our own fan fiction, but for the people that we're creating, which I think is really, really cool. Like, we get to shape the stories of these people. We get to lend, like, we can put bits of ourselves that we want to. But I think one of the other beauties of when we write together is whether it's like past trauma or whether it's a bad situation, whatever the case may be, is once you lend it to this character, you kind of almost release it yourself, and you're like, okay, cool. Now, how do I shape this individual story in a way that isn't necessarily my own, but you get to lend a little bit of your own experiences, but also have fun with it at the same time.
And then
yeah.
also, I found personally, like, because, this is my first experience really hardcore writing songs that are actually going to be released and put out into the world and stuff. Like, especially going through the hard times in the beginning, what with COVID and like all the stuff going on in my personal life and everything. Yeah, just that, like, once you give over that story to a character or to this other, now it's the person in the song who's singing it, it's their story now, then it makes it so much easier to like actually talk about these events. You know what I mean? Like I would never be able to sit there and like be like I'm saying these words about my own experience, but now that it's their experience,
Mm.
there's like it's I don't know, it's definitely really therapeutic and it's definitely really healing.
Yeah. I mean, I think to any degree, like whether you're writing something that's like you're trying to tell somebody else's story, like if you're of something you heard, somebody whatever the case may be, or you're just kind of like writing something that is like comes from a very, I went through this, I dealt with this kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, regardless of where that scale falls, there is a part of you that's in it, regardless of whether you want to be in it or not. And like, because you can only, like, especially creating things, you can only remove yourself from it so much. Like, you can't be an impartial party to your own
Mhm.
creation. Like, that's just not how things work. And so, like, there, I've never really heard it and heard it kind of talked about in the way that you guys are talking about it with like truly trying to imagine these people as different characters and separating yourself in that way. Because it is like you're kind of just taking this nugget of personal experience or whatever the touch point is,
Hmm.
and then letting it be what it's going to be in this other space. And then it also kind of, you get to then look at it kind of from an outside perspective. Like you get to remove yourself from the situation and, maybe it helps shed some light on some things. Maybe it just kind of opens some new doors. Like there's a lot of possibility with enabling that sort of transaction.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where you think, if I have an experience that I want to write about, I'm like, if whatever the story is, you have your own beginning, middle, end.
Mhm.
But the beauty of, I think, one of the fun things about how we write is, yes, we have a beginning, middle, end, and we'll lend, my experience or Nicole's experience might be, here's a spark for a really cool song. But then I think as we start to develop it, we don't necessarily have to like go based on our own experience and go, well, I experienced this and this is how this song is going to go or this song is going to end. You can kind of go like, okay, well, that was a traumatic event. Let's talk about how it could have been. And then the sad song becomes something positive.
Yeah, no, it's always cool how a like song idea turns into like that journey, because like we
Mhm.
said earlier, is that ever a linear thing the way we have it mapped out? Absolutely not. That would be too
No,
easy. It's always some sort of convoluted process, and it's always that's what keeps it interesting. That's the way I like to think about it. That's what
I
keeps
agree.
it interesting. That's what keeps new ideas coming. Like if you took the same journey every single time you had an idea, your songs would probably start looking a lot the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
yeah.
it's kind of fun to never know what's gonna happen.
I don't think we've tapped into the songwriter formula for for radio friendliness just yet. But I think it's what keeps it more fun.
Oh, absolutely. Is there a song that you've written that you think best embodies who you are as an artist? Your one song sample of if you listen to this, you'll like the rest. What would kind of be your elevator pitch in song form to convert a
I have
fan?
this is where it's like there's two of us, so we'll always have different. But I
Yeah.
always have mine that like I think embodies us perfectly,
Mhm.
which is bad for
Are you gonna
each
say
other.
bad? Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
bad
say
for each other
yeah.
is a story that I think embodies like everything we've talked about in the perfect way, where it's just we looked at it and said, okay, it was the story of these two people that these two kids who are everyone in the world goes like, you guys should not be
Be
together.
together.
This is a bad
Bad idea.
idea. Where and like we all have that where like you'll have friends and you'll have family like you probably shouldn't be with that person because we've seen like
How you are together,
yeah
like
how you are
yeah.
together and the negative impact it has and imagine having that from like every single angle but these two kids just look at each other and be like no like screw this small town like we're good we work and let's keep it together.
Mhm.
um I don't know. I think it started off. I don't know if you're a Modern Family fan, but like we kind of thought of
Haley and
Haley and Dylan
yeah.
and that
Yep.
like idea of like, okay, these two are just that's a bad combo, but it works. At least in the
Yeah.
early spot where like they actually worked really well together. So that's where it kind of started, and then we just built up this whole like town and these like
All the different there's so many characters we touch on in it, like all the different people in their lives, like
yeah,
it's
like
just
I mean we
like
talk
their
about
different relatives and stuff who are judging them, and
like
like the people who like own the local movie theater and get mad when they're in there, like doing X-rated things in the movie theater, and like
and again, like all of those things, it might be like half a line in the song, or you may not even hear it at all. Like I want to go back and look at it and just as we talk about it now, go back and be like, the X-rated theater isn't even in there. But or like it is a really, really fun way to look at it. I mean, I think the single that we released last year, Until You're Erased, is also a really, really good example if we want to look at the other, like the sad side to it.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it is really, really fun to be able to kind of create this little universe in the span of like 3.5 to 4 minutes. And know that there's so much going on inside of that song. And I mean, we'll call it Easter eggs, but
Mhm.
I think it's really, really fun to be able to kind of know that there's just this world in this song that some people will know about, some people won't. They'll hear the song, be like, "That's really catchy." I'm like, "Great," and then some people are like, "Tell me more about this one person." I'm like, "Great, awesome, yeah, we'd love to tell you all about this couple and everything that they've gone through."
Yeah. Do you think that you can hear the like the Modern Family inspiration in there, or is that just purely from a like that's how you guys saw it standpoint?
People like after hearing the song, sometimes if people listen to the song and then we talk about it afterwards and we say like, Modern Family, they go, "Oh," you know what I mean? Like sometimes, but I don't think anyone would see it without us giving a little
Yeah,
bit of
I
a
mean, I always use
hint,
that as like, okay, here's like, if you want
inspiration.
the like the 5 minute, like the 5 second pitch, like these two, yeah, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Um, but and again, like that's a really good. I think like we started writing it, we haven't finished it yet, but that those two characters in that song are the ones where we said, could we potentially write a song about them 5 years later? So they've moved out of this town, and everything that we like, everybody warned them about, like you guys are going to end up like in a trailer park if you're together. So we're like, could we write a song about them living in this trailer park and talk about like life now? So yeah, I think that's one of the really, really fun things about the whole thing.
Yeah. And then I think, yeah, my answer has probably changed now that we've written new songs. But yeah, so bad for each other. And then maybe definitely Until You're Erased, I guess, but also like Meet Me at the Table, because I
Mm,
think Meet Me at the Table is definitely like, it's like the 3 act story arc. You know what I mean? Like it starts, it has the beginning, the middle, and the end. You see these characters grow and they go from sort of the like their growth and journey of like, oh, maybe we need to end this relationship to like, now there's new hope kind of a thing. And then it also like musically I think represents us really well because we're such dramatic little theater kids, we sometimes like to add a lot of harmonies
yeah,
and a very big like dramatic build in the music, and epic drums and
and
like
the most important thing in all of our song and most of the key change.
oh yes, the key change.
You have to have the key change to really show like, oh, now we're in a different world of this story.
So those are some elements that you'll find. So a
Yeah.
couple songs to sample for some generalized broad-treeness.
I have not met anyone that started in musical theater that's not like harmonies are number one. And the key change has like might as well write musical theater kids on your forehead at that point. Like that's key change is so putting you guys in that and like I said, it's always cool to see people's origin stories and things like that come through in the music. And that's exactly like you could probably hear it and everything, but it's not like, it's not slapping you in the face, but it's there.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things about the whole, not everybody will see the musical theater storytelling element. They'll go, "Oh, this is a good song," or "This is like it's a cool country song," and then the key change will come in, and somebody's like, "Whoa, we didn't see the key change coming." And we're like, "Yeah, that's we have to stop doing that because it's in so many of our songs." But yeah, I think it is really really fun to be able to kind of for people to be able to pick up on those things and whether or not they know that it's a musical theater element that's kind of been in there, it is fun to really have somebody go, that was didn't see the key change coming, but that was really cool. We're like, yeah, that we expect that to happen.
You don't see it all that often. Like people do not use a key change all that frequently. And so being able
Yeah,
to do that really is like you're going to keep like that's if you didn't have them locked in then, you got them locked in now.
exactly.
Yeah. It just always feels so good. You can see it when you play live. You hit the key change and like everyone immediately is like uplifted, you know?
I love that.
And even somebody who's not into it, like it'll just go, oh,
Catch your
like,
attention a little bit.
yeah, they give you the little head tilt. You're like, you know what? I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if somebody was just like completely zoned out and then that happens, it's like now I'm awake. Like now I'm
Yeah.
there. Yeah. If you had to pick two or three artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who would it be?
Interesting.
I mean,
I mean, okay, so Eric told us we sounded like Little Big Town a little bit, right?
yeah, I mean, our publicist at one point was like, "Little Big Town is right up your alley. We'll take it."
It's really hard to objectively as a,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. I think because we come from such interesting influences, well, the song we released back in November was almost kind of like a pop punk anthem because,
He's
like,
got the punk.
yeah, I got the punk side to it. Um, yeah, I don't, Dear Evan Hansen. I mean, if like I'm not an artist, but it's a musical, and I can be like,
That'll
what?
count. That'll
Our
count.
songs could have
Yeah.
like, there's a couple of songs that we've written that I'm like, they could have gone into that musical. Yeah, I don't know. Do we like rather than artists, do we just start shouting out musicals? Because I think that might actually be the better.
Okay, so we really, really, I mean, I don't know that our music necessarily sounds like theirs per se, but like we really love the Reclaws.
Mm,
They're a Canadian country duo. So like, and they're also they're very like we kind of I wouldn't say we model ourselves after them, but they're definitely kind of like heroes, I guess, in a way, because they have a similar vibe to us in that they're like very sort of fun loving and like energetic and like silly and
yeah.
yeah. So the Reclaws, I
Yeah,
guess,
I
they're
would say as far
pretty.
as the influences, yeah, the Reclaws are up there. Little Big Town is, and oh, I don't know. There could be a song that like models Counting Crows. Another one will be Taylor Swift, and another one will be like Simple Plan could have sung this if we really wanted it to. So yeah, it sounds cliche to be like, oh, it's hard to like find an artist that like matches us, but it honestly sometimes depends on the song. Like if you pulled us up on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever the case may be, and you went song by song, you'd be like, okay, well, this is this. So yeah, but I think it is one of the fun parts.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and especially it being your own music, it's always hard to look at it and be like, this is who I sound like. Because I don't know about if you guys feel the same way, but listening to my own stuff, I'm always like, I can't even like hear it in terms of like sonically as like if it's on a playlist or something like next to all
Mhm.
these other songs, it sounds different to me just because it's mine. Like
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
can't hear, I can't receive that music the same way as I can receive everything else. And so it's hard enough even to put that on the same playing field with anything else.
100, and I think a really good and maybe a good way to kind of answer that is a lot of the times you'll see, Instagram ads and things for artists. They'll be like, oh, if you like this artist, this artist,
Yep.
this artist, you'll like this, which is an amazing way to market because it'll catch your attention. If you're like, oh, all three of these are in my book, like, absolutely, let me give this person a listen. I don't know what we would put on ours.
Yeah.
Like, I actually don't know. I'm like, I don't. If you like musical theater and country, then like here you go. That might be the thing to put in. Um, which I'm sure has a like there's other people that be like, oh, cool. I don't know how niche that market is, but it's there.
You could get some diehards in that market, I feel like for sure. I feel like that's not like you're gonna get like there's a large country audience, there's a large musical theater audience. That middle portion of the Venn diagram, couldn't tell you
Yeah.
how big that part
No.
Yeah.
is, but those people would be dedicated. Like
Yeah.
those people would
Yes.
be
Yeah.
invested in what y'all are doing. Like that
Yeah.
is they were like that's the thing is like the more niche you go, I feel like the more hardcore those people are. Like nobody's
Yeah.
like a diehard pop music fan. You know? Like you just can't be because it's so broad, it's so, it comes and it goes in terms of what it is, like but the nicher you go,
Fair.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on there, I'm sure.
for sure.
Uh this is the point in the podcast where I take a question from last week's artist for this week's artist. And this will probably be one that you guys can each answer. The question from last week's artist is, what is your current favorite album and why?
Do you have
Oh,
one?
like a current favorite album like that we're listening to right now, kind of thing.
What whatever you would say like in this current moment your favorite album is, whether it's recent, whether it's old, like whatever the first thing that comes to mind that you're like this is the one.
Okay, I kind of have two. One of
Okay.
them is the Twister soundtrack, which Armand knows this because every time I just recently finally got my license last year, and every time I drive, I have to listen to the Twister soundtrack. I don't know why. Now I'm not even sure if I'm capable of driving without listening to the Twister soundtrack at this point because I just always do, but it's really long, which is helpful for long drives. And like, I mean, if you've heard who sing Ain't No Love in Oklahoma?
Luke
It's Luke
Combs.
Combs. Oh my God. Such a banger to start it off with. And then there's just so many good country songs the whole way through. And they're all like so cleverly connected to the film, or else just like really like, oh, this really touches my soul, or like, oh, it's such a banger. So I really like those. And then I've also gotten really into Mariana's Trench lately.
Who are
So
I would say like the punk rock version of us.
yes, because they're also very theatrical.
Extremely theatrical, like big, gigantic, like you could make a musical out of their song.
Easily, like every concert I'm sure is almost like a musical because it's just so like orchestral, and like every album is like a big movement, so it's kind of hard to pick a specific album. So I guess I'll say their latest album, which is Haven. um but I like the like happy vibey songs out of theirs, so like I kind of made my own playlist of like all the albums, so just across the board right now, Mariana's Trench for me.
Meanwhile, I'm literally going
How
through
about
like
you?
my well, the stuff that I've been listening to recently.
What about you? Should say Taylor Acorn.
Yeah, Taylor Acorn has been like on my playlist quite a bit. She has this album called Certified Depressant. Um, and Taylor Acorn's an interesting one because she started out as this like pop country, like everything you could think about, like a cliche pop country female artist was her. And now, she's playing Warped Tour and she's playing like all these punk festivals. And you could just tell that she's just so much happier. Like the songwriting is still there. And you're like, this pop punk song could be a country song if you wanted it to be.
Yeah, they still sound kind of country, which is cool. Like we like the country punk combination too.
Yeah. But no, her last album, Certified, not her last one, but the one before that, I've been listening to a lot because it's fun, it's loud, and I don't know, she's got some really, really fun like quirks to her that I think translate quite a bit in her songwriting. I'll go that. That'll be my answer this week.
It is a hard question. It is an ever-changing answer.
Hmm.
But I think I'm gonna go back to the Twister soundtrack because I feel like that sums everything up. Is it's like you went straight for a soundtrack album that just so happens to also be full of country music. And so we're just kind of blending those two worlds naturally. We're getting more of that pop punk flavor. You guys literally said Mariana's Trench is like you guys, but with a pop punk twist. Like,
Maybe that's the answer to your other question then. Like artists that are similar to us.
That's actually not a bad way to look at it.
Wow. And does
if
that make
those, yeah, if it
you like
aligns.
listening
So
to
Marianne,
artists that sound like us?
If you
uh,
just happen to listen to Mariana's Trench and the Twister soundtrack,
and then you
this is for you.
Yeah.
go.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's good.
Yeah. No, and then Taylor Acorn it blends the two things, like you said, like went from country and is now like in that like it's like I'm hearing the same things come up time and time again, which is
Yeah,
just lends itself even more to how authentic the artistry is done with that, because it's like we're just like we're talking about the same things here, and
yeah.
it's like it's all painting the same picture. We like
And
that.
I think that's the fun thing about what we're doing is like, I at the end of the day, this is a really, really fun project for us. It's a great outlet. We're lucky enough that, we play enough shows that our artistry, like it pays for itself, which is great. So, but at the same time, I think, we're not, this whole journey has been a very, very big surprise. Like if you had asked us when we first started this, hey, will you be here doing interviews and like playing festivals, we just be like, no, that's not like that's not what we're after. And I still don't think it is. I think we're not in this for like, oh, can we write a hit song that's going to hit, top 10 on the radio? If next week we're like, we should write like a more of like a big pop punk anthem, we'll do it, because we don't like to consider ourselves kind of confined into that space. Every now and then, I don't know, if we're recording, we'll be like, okay, we probably turn that guitar just down just a tiny little bit. It's a little too loud, Armand. Just calm down. That's usually the note that I'll get. But yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of like where we're at right now, and I think where we've been from the very beginning is like that idea of like remaining true to kind of like what you want to do has been the forefront of it at the very beginning, and it's still here today.
Yeah, I mean that's and the like venturing off into new and different things. Like I know everybody gets caught up in the whole genre and brand, and like when you hear the word brand as an independent artist, you a lot of people I feel like just shut down and are like, well, I don't want to put myself in a box. I don't want to do this, that, or the other thing. Like I want to just do what I want to do, and it's not about putting yourself in that box. It's about defining what that looks like and presenting
Yeah.
it that way. And that can change. There's nothing wrong with that. Look at how many artists today have gone through all these different eras. Like
Hmm.
every album is a new experience. Like Post Malone's doing country music now. Who would have thought that
Yeah.
that was in the cards? Like that's, things are just kind of all over the place, and there's no wrong way to go about it. That's just how things naturally progressed.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. Like do that. Don't stick yourself in
Exactly.
where you like feel like you need to be. Do the other
And
thing.
and I think that all that comes in with like work, like writing with different people or working with different producers or even just getting different musicians on your tracks. It's nice to always just change it up and not necessarily be kind of confined to that box, or just pretending the box doesn't even exist. 'Cause I don't know if it really does in this world.
I think I've found also like people in general, they like things that are unique. I
Mhm.
mean, you can find great success by being the same sort of thing that's sort of popular, but like the things that people are, tend to, I find, gravitate toward or remember at least are the things that are very unique. Like when you look at like some of, I don't know, I always think like Queen and Pink Floyd and stuff like that. We're so friggin' weird, so
Very
bizarre,
weird.
so bizarre, but people love that to this day. And it.
And I think you kind of, again, I keep saying hit the nail on the head. I think, I think if I'd rather have like a little theater of 500 people that are in that little Venn diagram
Mhm.
than, necessarily like 18,000. And don't get me wrong, it'd be really cool. Like, I'm not saying no to any artists out there. Like, would be amazing to play that. But, if at the end of the day, there's like 100 fans that love that little niche, gladly, like that'd be amazing to have. So,
And then we always say, I mean, like, I think, hopefully, I think for most artists, but certainly for us, like we measure success in that, if our song touches or helps or, impacts even one person, then what more could you possibly ask for, right? So, and we've been lucky enough to have some people say that it has. So,
Take it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
means more
mean,
to us than
yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, no, it's because like impact on that scale, on the more personal scale is something that, it feels larger because it's personal, rather
Mhm.
than like, like you said, 18,000 people in a room, like that's cool, but like that's not like as tangible or as easily tangible as a like thing to, take with you as
Exactly.
something like having somebody be like, hey, like your song, like that hit home to me for whatever reason. Like that's where you like that's a fan versus like all 18,000 of those people aren't necessarily going to be fans. You
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
it's more about having the people that are like truly dedicated to what you're doing and are invested and are on that same page than a lot of people that are just kind of casually there.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Like because the casual isn't like that's just casual. They're not,
Casual. Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think, yeah. Um, what is your question for the next artist?
I have mine. Do you?
Yours is probably better than mine, but I can say mine and you can tell me if yours is better.
Okay.
Okay. I would just say, like, what is your favorite song you've written and what's the story behind it? What would be yours? It's probably better.
Mine was on the songwriting side, and like I love this one is if you could write with anybody, who would it be?
Mm.
And it could be, somebody like your next door neighbor. It could be a huge big name artist. But I think it's always fun to not necessarily look at like the producing side, but more so like who would you want to write a song with? Because it's a completely different journey.
Yeah. No, I think both of those are good. I'm usually I have to sit and wait for a minute before anybody comes up with anything, but you guys are both like, "Well, I have one. Do you have one?" And you're both ready to go. Look at that. Sometimes I
We'll give you
forget to
both.
go
You could,
back to that when we have a whole like spiel after that. I totally could
yeah.
have just moved on and totally forgotten about it, but those are good. I like those. What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists and acts?
I think we're we're in it for fun. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing is like for us, our number one thing that we said at the very, very beginning was um this should be fun. Like, yes, there's work involved and like where there's rehearsals and writing and recording, and you do need to put work into it, but if we're not necessarily finding the fun out of it, if there's ever a point, and this has happened in the past where the moment that we're like, okay, there's something up, like we need to course correct, we can sit down and be like, okay, what's happening and how do we fix it? And I think a lot of that came from like we love performing. Performing is our thing. We're theater kids. That's kind of the and I think in 2023 we performed so much that it got to the point where we're like, we need to stop. Like we need a hard stop because the festivals that we were really, really excited about towards the end of, like a 50 show summer, we were just sitting going like, I don't like we'll play it, but uh this is
Yeah.
another gig. Like we're kind of exhausted. So I think, we sat back, we took a 6 month break and then kind of sat back and went, all right, how do we make this fun again? And that sometimes just resetting and being able to be like, we're in this for the fun. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the key thing that,
We're not trying to meet anybody else's goals.
yeah, yeah. I think being able to kind of reset and be like, what we get to define our own goals. We're not looking at it from the stream side of things. We're not looking at it from the followers. I think the way Nicole said it is best is at the end of the day, if we can write a song and there's one person, whether it's someone or whether it's somebody, on the other side of the world that reaches out and says, hey, this song, like, help me get through this, or like whatever the case may be, that's the best thing you can ask for. And I think that would speak more to everything that we do. So I think that's kind of the thing that gives it a little bit more meaning. But yeah, it we don't have I want to say like we don't necessarily have like goals that we're trying to like, oh, we must do this. And I think
Mm.
that's kind of the fun thing about it is that every little thing that happens with us, we kind of go, oh, cool, that's fun. That was unexpected. Yeah, and I think that it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, definitely not. focusing on the numbers helps manage expectations a lot. Like I think because then the thing is too, especially with the way that the industry landscape is now, it's not there, you know, you could have somebody that has millions of streams, but they have like very small portion of that is actually like people that are considered fans. And
Hmm.
you can also have people that have like, you know, let's say 10,000 monthly listeners and like a bunch of fans, like they're selling out like smaller venues and stuff like that. Like there's so many different factors into what equates any form of success, especially like in the current landscape with the internet and all of those things. And so getting caught up in the numbers is just like you're doing yourself a disservice because those aren't numbers that you have control over. Like you can do
Exactly.
all the things to move those, try and move those needles, but like at the same time, what happens and what is received the way that you intend for it to be received isn't up to you. All you can do is
Hmm.
put your best foot forward. And that's why like the way I try to look at it is very much like progress over everything else. Like just do something to, you know, have something that would make this release feel accomplished or like you're moving in the direction you want to be moving in. If that is simply just like, you know, venturing out into that pop punk moment, have that moment. That can be the win in itself. It doesn't have to be, oh, if it doesn't reach like 10,000 streams like in the first like month, then oh, it's a failure. Like no, like we added another song to the catalog. We're chilling.
Yeah.
We're having a good time. Some people are out there enjoying it. We're fine. We don't need to
Hmm.
be up in arms about anything crazy. Like, just enjoy the process. If you can't enjoy
And
the
that's
process, you're
exactly
not
it.
going to enjoy the result.
Yeah.
And that's I think the motto that we had at one point one year is like, if it's not fun, you're not doing it right. And I
Right.
think that's
Hmm.
kind of like our takeaway from it is like the end result isn't really there so long as at the end of the day we're having a good time. And I think that's the important thing at the end of it is if you lose sight of that, then what's the point?
Yeah. And I also think like we also shout out to like the country community here in Ontario as well. I have to say it is awesome being part of a sort of a musical community that is so supportive of each other. And there's a lot of really genuine people and really genuine friendships as opposed to necessarily like comparing ourselves to others or like that having that competition. Like I'm sure it still exists to some degree in some people's minds, but like I don't feel personally I don't feel it at all.
No.
And like we have a lot of amazing friends that just we all just kind of support each other. And sometimes we, you know, we'll organize shows and we'll sort of help each other up and be like, oh, do you want to open for me or whatever it is. Like, yeah, there's a lot of support and a lot of great community in this
Yeah.
musical community, which is like also so great because like you know, even just being on Instagram and stuff like that, which I mean, we kind of started online because obviously we started during COVID before when everything was virtual. And at that time, like yeah, like it's hard sometimes, you know, because you're all you do we write and we sing and whatever and you put your stuff out there and you see 80 million other people in the world who are also putting their stuff out there and you go, "Oh my God, what am I even doing? They're so much better than me, blah 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 blah," you know? But like to being part of the real life community really hasn't felt like that at all. Like even people
Yeah.
that like, you know, in our brains were like, "Oh my God, you're so far ahead of me." They treat us like equals. They're so kind and just like loving and it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. So that I think is just where we love being part of that community too.
Yeah. It was when I found TikTok, I was very humbled because in high school I was like one of three people that was like making music and I thought I was so cool. And then I went to college and then COVID happened and then TikTok happened and I was like, oh, okay. All right. This I'm not special anymore. Like this is and like you said, like there are a lot of other people that I'm like looking at them like they are doing it better than me. They are farther along than me. And it's like as easy as it is to fall into that, you kind of have to like undo it a step and
Yeah.
go, everybody's journey is different, everybody's timeline is different. And I've honestly gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't want any sort of overnight like blow up sort of thing. I would rather just kind of take the baby steps along the way and enjoy it and then
Mhm.
not have to, you know, the viral game. You play that and it's like suddenly you have to catch up to everything that's expected of you to make that kind of thing work out for you.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
especially being like what you like you said with local stuff, like removing yourself from that, you know, that algorithm world is a nice
Mm,
breath of fresh air at times. It's
yeah.
a very much needed one too.
We we used to act like there, I'm sure it still exists in our Google Drive, but there is like a spreadsheet that tracked at one point like every post, the likes, like it was like an algorithm Bible of like, what do we need to do to make this next post do well?
Yeah.
Like our social media calendar was literally mapped out 3 months ahead of time and like, okay, here's the post, here's the story. And oh my God, the moment we stopped doing that, I was like, this is so much easier. This is so much better. Because yeah, I mean it's like trying to write the formula for the top 10 song. Like you can write 20 songs that are going to follow that, and if none of them hit, are you might find joy in it, but there's a lot of times where I feel like you go it and you're like, I just waste so much of my time hitting these 20 songs, and there's just one song that I really love that wasn't a part of that, and I'd rather do that. So
Yeah. Yeah, social media is a great tool, but it has also taken a life of its own that is sometimes very overbearing and just
Mhm.
kind of it feels like it's a whole other like project in itself.
mhm.
And it's, and this is coming from someone who's been working in social media since COVID. So it's a whole beast, but like it's a tool for what you can use it for, but it shouldn't be running the world in the way that we do music and approach things. Like, no, it's a
Yeah.
tool. That's all it needs to be. That's all the life that we should give to it. Like, let it be what it's going to be, and the rest will work itself out.
Just bring back the MySpace days. Those were the days. That's the pop punk person in me just going like, we learned HTML to like just make our website, or you didn't have a website. It was all about the MySpace. And that was fun. Yeah, it wasn't about the plays. It was who your top 8 friends were. That was
I miss the MySpace time. I was
right.
not a part of that. I
I see myself out now and
it just it well it probably wasn't that far before my time, but it was a little bit
yeah.
before my time. Um yeah, no, but yeah, I mean you go like social media had a time where it was a great like thing, like
It
Instagram
was
before
it
we
was
started doing
social
reels
media.
and before yeah, it
It was
was
social media. It
yeah.
was social. That was
Yep.
I think the key word of it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh I think we've probably touched on it a little bit, but I ask it as a question anyway. So, what impact do you want to have with your music and with your artistry?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to sort of reiterate from before, yeah, like we always feel like if we just help or touch or impact even one person, then that's like what more could you possibly ask for? To actually have touched somebody's life is a big thing, and we've been fortunate. Um, we released uh we released a song way back in the early days, actually.
By
Um,
early days, I mean like 4 years ago, so it wasn't that long
well,
ago.
yeah, but I mean, like, when we were kind of new to
Yeah.
doing this, I guess. And we like put out sort of like a pride anthem, I guess. And it's a song called Biaz, which is a spin-off of Prozac song. Do you know Prozac? They're like a small Canadian like techno band. Anyways, they were super popular in the 90s. They had a lot of fun like cartoon music videos, just great. Anyways, we love them. But basically we sort of did a spin-off of like a one of their songs and added sort of a bunch of lyrics in. But the song from the beginning is like be as is like be as whatever it is that you are as you want to be. Like that's, you know, like own your identity kind of a song. And yeah, we put that out into the world. And somebody wrote us back and told them that it actually gave them the courage to come out to their parents, which was like just such
Yeah,
a
that was
beautiful thing. Some stranger, like it wasn't anyone either of us knew from life. Like it was somebody out there in the interweb
yeah.
in the world. And like to hear that is just like, wow, that's huge. And like the fact that like a song that we made could give somebody that confidence in themselves to like, yeah, I don't know. It was very special.
Yeah,
So that was,
that sums it up. That's a really good way to look at
yeah.
it. Yeah, I
Because
think
that's like a real impact to have on
mhm.
somebody's life, right?
Yeah, and I mean we didn't dive into the mental health thing, and that's totally fine because I don't think we need to.
Right.
Like mental health is a big element of all of our writing, and I think whenever we do and not just I think on the music side, but on the bigger side of things. Like we'll do fundraisers for the Canadian the
Canadian
Center for Addiction and
Addiction
Mental
Mental Health.
Health, um, or even the like we played benefits for the Canadian Mental Health Association. So I think for us, it's also not just a matter of like how does our music touch people, but also how does the music industry and our contribution to it allow other people to be a part of. So whether it's creating a fundraiser where we raise like money for KMH, or create like a little songwriter around where it's all about mental health and mental illness, like and addiction, and people are comfortable to be able to kind of go onto a stage and be like, I have a safe space to talk about like the darkest points in my life that aren't really a good thing to talk about, but suddenly like we have a room of 100 people that wants to listen to that story. Like that to us is that's the impact that I think like we love having and being able to have is, if somebody can be able to tell that story, or we have a venue in Toronto called the Horseshoe Tavern, which is like it's legendary. Like the Stones have played there, like everybody and their mother at some point or another has played this venue. And we're lucky enough that we've started up a little series that we do every 6 months. And when we have artists that like we reach out to and we say like, hey, like, do you want to open the show, or do you want to play, or do you want to headline it? Uh, for us, it's one of those where like I think sometimes we take for granted that it's the Horseshoe Tavern, but when you see an artist being like, this is a dream come true, like I'm getting to play like where like Mick Jagger stood at one point, or like in this point, like Keith Urban announced a surprise show that he did there a couple of weeks ago. Um, it is really really fun to be able to be like, oh, like that, cool. It's fun to know that you had that little bit of a touch, and I think if we can continue to do that and impact other people in that way, that's my biggest thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think, and I appreciate the stories on top of like this is kind of a message that we've been kind of carrying throughout. But going back to the whole 18,000 versus like 100, 500 person room, to properly say what I was trying to say earlier, you are able to have that impact on a smaller scale
Mm.
in a more personal way when you're on a smaller scale than, you're not touching anybody personally when you're in this stadium sort of environment. Like it's not you're not getting up close and personal with it. And so that's why like having sorts of opportunities to do things like what you guys are talking about doing with these different, like whether it's an advocacy kind of thing or even just, you know, because there's some sort of personal touch and, like emotion to everything that you write. Like being able to build those connections in that way and have that as your like vessel to reach those people, like that's what it's about. You're right. Like just honestly, what are we doing with these stadium things anyway? Let's just all stay small. Let's just all stay small, keep it
Like,
intimate, keep it personal, keep those, those personal touches just going.
yeah, I mean, I don't go to an arena or a stadium show to like be like, oh, let me connect to the. No, I go, I'm like,
Right.
this is going to be a cool show. Like,
Yeah.
I expect this to be a gigantic show.
Spectacle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the moment like you hear a band go, oh no, we're going to do like an acoustic tour in like an 800 person club, like that's the thing I really want to go to. Like, I'd love to be able to see you like bare bones and down your, and then which is why I think like songwriter rounds, or like going to Nashville and just like going to the Bluebird, when you have an artist that just randomly stops by and are like, oh, like great, we actually get
Yeah.
to hear the stories behind the songs, and I think that's so much better.
Yeah. It's the personal experience. That's where it's
Mhm.
at. I think that brings us to the final question, which is ultimately the concept behind the podcast, which is why music?
Mm.
um I had so one of the coolest gifts that I ever got was like my first girlfriend gave me this book that she's like, this is for your ticket stubs. Because there was a point where like my wallet was that thick when I was a kid, and it just had every ticket from every concert that I'd been to. She's like, cool, you should, if you're going to lose your wallet and you're going to hate your life, so here's a book, start putting it together. And on the front of that book, it's um, where words end, music begins. And I think that, I mean, it's a classic thing of, it is such an incredible, like, I think vessel's a good word for it, but it's this just incredible way to be able to tell something, whether it's a story or whether it's a message. I mean, we're in musical theater, so it's really fun to just, theater's fun, but musical theater is just that much more fun. um I don't know, it creates this whole other world. And the best part about it is that the world that you kind of create, whether you're an artist or you're a listener, you get to create your own experience on how that music touches you. So, the way you might listen to a song, or I listen to a song, or you or Nicole listens to a song, we're each going to pull our own thing in the way that might push a button with me, or it may not push a button with somebody else. But I think that that's magical. I think that to be able to kind of put that in. Um, and I also said this too. I was at a concert recently with my best friend, and while we were there, I was kind of looking around. I'm like, just given the state of the world right now, we're in a room where it what your background is or your political view or your ideologies or what, like, none of that matters right now. And like, how cool is it to be able to be in a room where none of that matters and we're here to just kind of share music, whatever that may look like. And I think that's a really good example of like that's a good answer to why.
That was really good. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I could word anything better than that, but I guess for me, I mean, obviously, as I feel like with most artists, music's definitely gotten through me through some of the hardest times of my life. There's just something about it that is so universal, and I think that that is so important. One of the things that I always bring up whenever we write a song about mental health or we play a show that involves mental health or anything like that, I think that because music is so universal and it fosters connection and it fosters understanding, it's just such a great way to talk about issues like mental health because, these can be scary topics that people are sort of leery of, but you might come up to somebody and say, like, well, I'm bipolar, and there's that, oh, well, I don't understand that, I don't know what that is, so there's a distance that's created. But if you tell a feeling or a story or show them what that feels like through music, they recognize those feelings, they recognize those emotions, and then suddenly they get it. There's an understanding that comes through it too, which I think is like definitely magical. Like, it's just, and the fact that like music spans all cultures and all, like, it's just, there's something definitely in it for everyone, and it just connects people and communicates things in a way that, I don't know, like, I guess all art to a degree does
Yeah.
that, but for me it's always been music that I felt the deepest connection with.
I think there was one really good one that I saw the other day where basically somebody said, music are what feelings sound like. And I'm like, I like that. I'll take that. So I think there's something just really magical about how transcendent it is, that it can literally just be a fun song that you drive to, or it could be the thing that gets you through like the worst period of your life. And it's really cool to think that like there is one art form that can do all of that in one shot.
And I also find it affects you so deeply. Like, that's why we have scores in movies, right? Like, it influences you immediately. It can uplift you or make you feel those deep, dark, sad feelings. Like, it's like an instant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
Really
no,
long answer to that
no,
question, but
That's a big question.
no, it is a big question. That's why I save it for the end. That's why it's the title. That's why it's all these things. No, and I haven't heard the where words and music begins in a long time. Like, that's hearing that again, I'm like, okay, perfect. And like both of you were talking about like the exact same, like that is the whole idea. Like, it quite literally is like you said, if you tell somebody, if you say bipolar, they assume one thing, but if you explain behind that, explain experiences, what kind of that, what experiencing that is like, then you understand. But it's like you can't just say the words and completely communicate that. It's like we have to find a way to put it in perspective and make it something that, like, even though you're not seeing it from the same set of eyes, we can look at this and kind of understand it in the same way. Like, that's where the music part kind of falls into place. And it's, it quite literally is the way feelings sound. That's, yeah, it's two very good ways to put something that is very indescribable and
yeah,
very like hard to like think about if you had to explain what music is like to someone who's never heard it before and you couldn't show them music. Try
yeah,
that. See how that would go.
yeah.
That's
That's the little thing of like,
that's
how do
as
you
close as we
explain
can
music
get.
to an alien that comes in like from another planet? You're like, oh, where do you start?
I can't even
It's like trying
explain
to
what I want to
explain
do
that.
to songs to begin with. Like, I can't articulate what that's supposed to sound like. Explain music in general? No.
Yeah, no.
That's just that. Well, next question, please. We'll move on. Uh, yeah, no, I think you guys hit it on the head, and like the why is usually so deeply rooted that a lot of these responses kind of, are in the same vein of like, there's nothing else like it. There's, it's just this, it's a communication tool that is unmatched in every other way. Like, the way I'm visualizing it right now is like, if you look at, like, if you go to some sort of like tool or like one of those like online things where you're looking at their pricing page and it's like the standard plan, the premium plan, and then like the
Hmm.
like expensive tier. Music is the only thing in that final column that checks off all of the boxes that the
Yeah.
other standard and premium plans don't. Like we can have a
Mhm.
nice heart to heart conversation. That's like standard plan ish. We're talking about like luxury service here.
I
Music is
love
like
that.
we're
That's
covering
great.
every single base. Um, yeah, like there's no other way to put it. That's it's where words end.
Yeah. Love that.
Uh, well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.